This is part 11, and by this time you must have realized that we have started understanding the procedure as far as the Negotiable Instrument Act is concerned. Right in the beginning, during the first lecture, in order to know negotiable instrument, we refer to section 13 of the Negotiable Instrument Act. And when we started dealing with the procedure to a certain extent, we wanted to know what do you mean by negotiation. For that, yesterday during part number 10, we dealt with what do you mean by negotiation as it is defined by section 14. And then to know the details, we had to correlate this section with chapter 4 right from section 46 onwards for the purpose of understanding what do you mean by negotiation. And when we were dealing with negotiation, the one aspect I hope which is made very clear by me by this time, that you put a piece of paper into circulation, or A hands over piece of paper to Mr. B, and then B is entitled for the amount for which it is drawn, and what is written on this piece of paper decides whether it is a promissory note as defined by section 4, whether it is bill of exchange defined by section 5, or whether it is check defined by section 6 of the Negotiable Instrument Act. So that is, this is secondly. As soon as when for that we refer to section 46, you remember the making, acceptance or endorsement of a promissory note, bill of exchange or check is completed by delivery, actual or constructive. It may be with agent also, constructive. It can be handed over to anybody on his behalf. Yes, that is so this is constructive, or actual means physical transfer, physical handing over of the negotiable instrument, but there must be a delivery. Now during the course of our lecture we learned that if a negotiable instrument is drawn by A in favor of Mr. B, then B can get the amount for which it is drawn. From whom? Yes, that aspect with which we shall be dealing now, because we are concerned with the liability with respect to the negotiable instrument. And in order to know liability with respect to the negotiable instrument, we will have to work out details as far as the procedure is concerned. For example, in case of a promissory note, as per the definition, it is the maker who is supposed to carry out payment. In case of a bill of exchange, it is the drawee who is given direction to carry out the payment, subject to the procedure with which we shall be dealing, that he has accepted the bill of exchange, in which case drawee is known as an acceptor. Yes, and in case of a check, the person will take check to the banker. So this is the direction which is given to the drawee banker to carry out payment with respect to the check that we shall be dealing. But now when the negotiable instrument is with Mr. B, the further part of the negotiation or further part of the negotiable instrument, or the characteristic of a negotiable instrument, is that instead of transferring cash from one hand to another hand, now this is the time where Mr. B, if at all he is not interested in getting money, but he wants to pay that money to somebody, Mr. C.
What he can do, he can pass it on to Mr. C. But this passing on is what is known as negotiation, that is one thing. And secondly, what is the manner in which a negotiable instrument can be negotiated entirely depends upon, as we have learned yesterday, nature of the instrument. If it is bearer instrument can be negotiated by mere delivery. But if it is an order instrument, then there must be an endorsement, and there must be delivery of the same. So B will pass it on to C, C will pass it on to D, D will pass it on to E, E to Mr. F. Accordingly, this can remain into circulation. And then, how long this can remain into circulation?
for that, I mean, instrument negotiable till payment or satisfaction, made very clear as far as section 60 is concerned. And it says a negotiable instrument may be negotiated except by the maker, drawee or acceptor after maturity until payment or satisfaction thereof by the maker, drawee or acceptor at or after maturity, but not after such payment or satisfaction. So how long this can remain into circulation, and the most important part, characteristic with which you are dealt, that if at all somebody wants to claim that he is a holder in due course, he must receive that negotiable instrument before maturity. So that we have dealt with. So now this is the time. If it is a bearer instrument, it can be merely it can be negotiated. So B can pass on to C, C can pass on to D, D can pass on to Mr. E, when only delivery serves the purpose as far as negotiation is concerned. But if it is, I mean, the sections to which we referred to yesterday, but if it is an order instrument, there must be an endorsement. And for the purpose of understanding endorsement, if you remember, the first section to which I had drawn your attention is section 15. And what it says, when the maker or holder of a negotiable instrument signs the same, otherwise than as such maker, for the purpose of negotiation, on the back or face thereof, on a slip of paper annexed thereto, or so signs for the same purpose a stamped paper intended to be completed as a negotiable instrument, he is said to endorse the same, he is said to endorse the same and is called the endorser. So this is, I mean, as far as the endorsement of a negotiable instrument is concerned. On the back of it, on the back of the negotiable instrument, general practice that has been followed, and nowhere it has been mentioned, but whatever, when B wants to pass it on to Mr. C, on the back Mr. B will put his signature. Is it that he will only put signature? Signature constitutes valid endorsement, no doubt about it. But along with, I mean, at times he may write something about the signature also. This is on the back. Now, if the back is full, because the negotiable instrument can remain into circulation n number of days depending upon the maturity of it, and hence or till it has been satisfied or the payment is carried out, yes, till it, I mean, it will remain into circulation. So there is no restriction as to the number of the person, or there is no restriction as far as the number of endorsement is concerned. No particular form of words is required. Nowhere it has been mentioned, but general practice that has been followed is that endorsement is always, Mr. B will always sign on the back. If Mr. C wants to, and when C wants to pass it on to D, he will sign on the back of it. So at times, I mean, the back is full, and hence the person has got right to attach he can, I mean, have endorsement on a slip of a paper annexed thereto, and this slip of paper which is annexed thereto is what is known as allonge, because, I mean, there is no, I mean, nowhere it has been mentioned, but this is the practice that has been followed. This is what is known as an allonge, a slip of paper attached thereto, which is also part of the negotiation. So when the back is full, it's not that you can't, I mean, write down. You can, I mean, take a piece of paper, then it can be written on a slip of paper accordingly, and then he can, Mr. B can pass it on to C, C can pass it on to D, D can pass it on to E accordingly. Now, for the purpose of dealing with the various kinds of endorsement that I referred to you yesterday. But before, I mean, we start discussing this is a time, along with section 15, this is a time for me to draw your attention to section 48 of the Negotiable Instrument Act. And what is section 48 of the Negotiable Instrument Act? It says, subject to the provisions of section 58, a promissory note, bill of exchange or check payable to order is negotiated by holder by endorsement and delivery thereof. So it is when it is an order instrument. What is meant by an endorsement, you must understand. and what is the manner in which an order instrument can be negotiated. For that, along with section 15, this is the time for you to have reference to section 48, which says that there must be an endorsement and delivery of the instrument accordingly as far as the negotiation is concerned. And then, what do you mean by negotiation, with which you are dealt to a certain extent? If time permits and if it is required, I will repeat it again, no doubt about it. Now with this it's not that he has to, Mr. B or Mr. C has to merely put his signature. What he can do, along with the signature or above the signature, he can also write. For example, Mr. B can write, please pay to C, and it is signed by Mr. B. So now this is the time what is written by Mr. Endorser. So who is, if B makes an endorsement, or if there is an endorsement on the part of Mr. B, B is known as an endorser, and the person to whom it is negotiated is what is known as, C is known as endorsee. So endorser and endorsee is the relationship or the terminology with which we shall be coming across as far as understanding of the negotiable instrument is concerned. When it is passed on from C to D, C is what is known as an endorser and D is what is known as endorsee, as in case of transferor and transferee accordingly. So now this is the time if he writes down. So now what we want to understand? We want to understand different kinds of endorsement. And then if you refer to section 16, which makes it very clear that endorsement, it deals with what? Endorsement in blank and in full. And then it says, if the endorser signs his name only. So now what he has done, if B merely puts his signature or endorser merely puts his signature, the endorsement is said to be blank. So he merely signs without making mention of the name of anybody to whom the direction is given to carry out the payment. No, he merely puts his signature. Yes, endorsement is must, because what is the nature of the instrument? Because we are concerned with the endorsement if the nature of the instrument is order, otherwise not. If it is bearer, it can be negotiated. Now we are concerned with the procedural aspect, and hence that can be negotiated by endorsement. So what is he puts his signature. If he has merely put his signature, then what do we say? This is what is known as endorsement in blank. And if he adds a direction to pay the amount mentioned in the instrument to or to the order of a specified person, the endorsement is said to be full. So endorsement in blank does mean he merely puts his signature. But if Mr. B writes above his signature, please pay to C, and the person so specified is called the endorsee of the instrument. So when B has given it to Mr. C, C becomes what is known as an endorsee. And when B has written name of Mr. C, the endorsement above his signature, the endorsement is known as endorsement in full. If he has not, he has merely put his signature, this is what is known as endorsement in blank. And hence, the further part of section 16 says, because we are concerned to find out the liabilities of the parties with which we shall be dealing, no doubt about it. And hence, what the further part of the subclause 2 says, the provisions of this act relating to payee shall apply with the necessary modifications to an endorsee. So the provisions which are applicable to payee are also applicable to endorsee, subject to certain modification with which we shall be dealing during course of our lecture. With this now, as we have dealt with section 6, we have started discussing section 16 onwards for the purpose of understanding various kinds of endorsement. This is a time for me to draw your attention to two sections. One section is section 54 and the other section is section 55. Now section 54 says instrument endorsed in blank, and it says subject to the provisions hereinafter contained as to cross checks, a negotiable instrument endorsed in blank is payable to the bearer thereof, even although originally payable to order. So now this is when we have started discussing various kinds of endorsement. At times, for example, when B has merely put his signature, B has written a name of Mr. C, and what he has done, he has delivered it to Mr. C. When C wants to put it into circulation, what Mr. C has done, C has merely put his signature. So now putting mere signature. So if you read section 54 along with section 55, and what is section 55? Section 55 deals with conversion of endorsement in blank into endorsement in full. So now that's as soon as he has signed, Mr. B has written down, please pay to C, and he has handed, there is a delivery to Mr. C. This is what is known as endorsement in full. If Mr. C wants to further put it into circulation to Mr. D, he will write down, please pay to D. Again, this is endorsement in full. But what C can do, C can merely put his signature but without making mention of the name of Mr. D. And hence, what is the effect of it? The instrument which was order instrument now becomes a bearer instrument which can be negotiated by mere delivery. So if you read section 54 and then section 55, it says, in case of section 55, it says, if a negotiable instrument after having been endorsed in blank, so right in the beginning that was endorsement in blank, is endorsed in full, the amount of it cannot be claimed from the endorser in full except by the person to whom it has been endorsed in full or by one who derives title to such person. So these are two sections, namely section 54 and section 55. With this now, so this is endorsement in full, endorsement in blank and endorsement in full, and there can be conversion of endorsement in blank into endorsement in full also. So if B has merely put signature and given to Mr. C, C can write down please pay to D. So blank endorsement has result now is converted into that of full. If he writes without writing down anybody's name now, if he has passed on by merely putting his signature, the instrument again becomes. So when there is endorsement is in what is known as blank, that can be negotiated by mere delivery, because that becomes as good as a bearer instrument as far as the provisions of the Negotiable Instrument Act are concerned. With this now, section 56 deals with what do you mean by partial endorsement. And this says, section, when we refer to this section, it says, but before we start discussing section 56, this is the time for me to draw your attention to one more section, and that is section 49 of the Negotiable Instrument Act, which deals with what? This section 49 deals with conversion of endorsement in blank into endorsement in full. And it says the holder of a negotiable instrument endorsed in blank may, without signing his own name, by writing above the endorser's signature a direction to pay it to any person as endorsee, convert the endorsement in blank into an endorsement in full, and the holder does not thereby incur the responsibility of an endorser. So what he can do? Convert. There can be conversion of endorsement in blank into endorsement in full as far as section 49 is concerned. And then section 50 deals with the effect of the same. And what it says? It says the endorsement of a negotiable instrument followed by delivery transfers to the endorsee the property therein with the right of further negotiation. But the endorsement may, by express words, restrict or exclude such right, or may merely constitute the endorsee an agent to endorse the instrument or to receive the contents of the endorser or for some other specified person. So this is now after I am discussing section 49. If you start reading section 50, it deals with what is known as restrictive endorsement. What does it mean? Mr. B writes on above his signature, pay the contents to C only. So if he has written pay the contents to C only, then this is, it is only Mr. C who is entitled to claim the amount, and hence this is what is known as partial endorsement as far as section 50 of the Negotiable Instrument Act is concerned. So this is what is known as restrictive endorsement as far as section 50 of the Negotiable Instrument Act is concerned. Or there can be, if you go through the illustrations which are given after section 50, you will come to know what is this restrictive, and you will understand the details of it. But it says the endorsement of a negotiable instrument followed by delivery transferred to endorsee the property therein with the right of further negotiation. There he has got right to B can pass it on to C, and C has got right of further negotiation. But the endorsement may, by express word, so there is a provision restrict or exclude such right. So this right can be restricted or excluded by making mention please pay. So B can write down please pay to C only. So C cannot further, and this is what is known as restrictive endorsement as far as section 50 of the Negotiable Instrument Act is concerned. With this now, if you read section 56, which deals with what do you mean by partial endorsement, and it says generally you cannot have an endorsement for part of the amount, because there must be certainty of payment. And what is the payment which is required to be carried out with respect to the negotiable instrument by the party who is supposed to carry out payment? Yeah, it is the amount for which it is drawn. But then at times there may be a case, as made very clear, that the part of the amount is already paid. Then the negotiable instrument can remain into circulation for the balance of the amount which remains unpaid, and that is made very clear as far as section 56 is concerned. It says no writing on a negotiable instrument is valid for the purpose of negotiation if such writing purports to transfer only a part of the amount. So part of the amount cannot be transferred. And it says only a part of the amount appearing to be due on the instrument, but where such amount has been partly paid. A note to that effect may be endorsed on the instrument, which may then be negotiated for the balance. So when the part of the amount is already paid, part of the amount for the negotiable instrument is drawn for the amount of 10,000 rupees. The amount of 5,000 is already paid by the maker. So now his liability is only for rest of the amount of 5,000 rupees. So the negotiable instrument can remain into circulation for the balance, and then the person who wants to put it into circulation or who has received the amount will put it into circulation by making mention the amount, namely please pay 5,000 rupees to Mr. C, and then he will put it into circulation. This is what is known as partial endorsement. So partial, first do understand No writing on a negotiable instrument is valid for the purpose of negotiation if such writing purports to transfer only a part of the amount appearing to be due on the instrument. It must be for whole amount. But where such amount has been partly paid, a note to that effect may be endorsed on the instrument, which may then be negotiated for the balance. So it can remain into circulation for balance, and this is exactly what is known as say a partial endorsement as far as section 56 is concerned. With this now, at times it may happen when you read section 52 of the Negotiable Instrument Act. It deals with one type of endorsement, the different kind of endorsement, and says endorser who excludes his own liability or makes it conditional. And what is that? It says the endorser of a negotiable instrument may, by express words in the endorsement, exclude his own liability thereon, or make such liability or right of the endorsee to receive the amount due thereon depends upon happening of a specified event, although such event may never happen. When an endorser so excludes his liability and afterwards becomes the holder of the instrument, all intermediate endorsers are liable to him. So now, if he excludes his liability, namely the endorser, he writes down when you read section 52, it says, if the endorser of a negotiable instrument may, by express words in the endorsement, exclude his own liability thereon. So please pay to see without recourse to me. So if he has written this, that is very without recourse to me, what does it indicate? That he has excluded his liability. He has put it into circulation. And this type of person, endorser excludes expressly his liability as far as the negotiable instrument is concerned. This is exactly what is known as a sans recourse endorsement. And at times, for example, he may put a condition. So he may put a condition. So this is one type of endorsement, what is known as sans recourse. Or he can, Mr. B, when he has passed it on to Mr. C, C to Mr. D, D can write down, please pay to E after his marriage. So now this is a condition, that is, if there cannot be conditional payment, but there can be conditional endorsement. So if certain condition is imposed by the endorser, now what is the effect of it, which we shall be dealing, but this is also what is known as conditional endorsement as far as the provisions regarding Negotiable Instrument Act are concerned. With this now, the time for us to understand as to what is the liability of the endorser, and hence from the point of view of understanding liability, the time for us to take into consideration one section. Now this is the time you must go on revising, because it is not one chapter or it is not one section which deals with the provision. Now as far as liability is endorser is concerned, which are the sections that we are going to take into consideration? So first of all, we started discussing that there can be a negotiation of an order instrument by endorsement and delivery. What is written if you merely put signature, that is endorsement. But then you write something above the signature, it can be what is known as endorsement in full. It can be what is known as conditional endorsement. It can be what is known as partial endorsement. It can be what is known as restrictive endorsement. It can be what is known as sans recourse endorsement accordingly, with which we have dealt so far. And now this is the time after discussing this now, when we want to understand as to what are the liabilities as far as, or what is the liability of the endorser. And in order to understand liability of the endorser, the sections that we are going to discuss are: 1. Section 35, 2. Section 38, 3. Section 40, and Section 41. Now, if you understood the procedure, first part of the procedure that I have told you just now, as far as the liability is concerned, and some revision as far as the endorsement is concerned, with which we will continue our discussion as far as next part of our lecture is concerned.